Welcome to episode 21 of the Guitar Builders Basics podcast for June the 9th, 2014. Luthier's tips, tricks and training from me, Ben Crow, in the UK. To you. Okay. This week I answer your questions about grain directions in guitar necks and in particular with regards to multi-laminate neck construction. Wood storage and curing for guitar building. This is something that I've run away from full tilt for many years, but something that has to be thought about and worried about by guitar builders everywhere. How thick should the top wood be in order to carve a PRS or a Les Paul carved top? And is an interchangeable jig for hearing different combinations of tone woods, is it possible? Is it feasible? Is it something that we should try to do or not? Are truss rods really essential? The big questions today. Truss rods, they've been around for many, many years, and do we actually need them? And yes, I'm going to cover that. And also, I've just decided a mini workshop tour just to show you how, well, as part of the news section, let's show you what's happening at Crimson Guitars at the moment. And it doesn't hurt that the workshop's a little tidier right now. Okay, so news. The very first thing and most important at the moment is we've got a new newsletter. I mentioned it last week, and from now on you're going to get very bored of me mentioning it ad infinitum. The newsletter is a place where I will be sending out links to the various bits of information that we create throughout the week, be it the reinstated, resurrected workshop diary that is finally going to be coming out weekly again, and obviously the podcast. There'll be links to the most recent episodes of the podcast and any other new videos that we do, because the podcast isn't the only thing. There are repairs and restorations and other tutorials coming along, and of course we also are constantly introducing new tools and the like. And there will also be a new weekly video, a much shorter format, Luthier's tip and trick or something. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet. And it'll be a 2 or 3 minute video just focusing on one small thing, and that will be, well, it's something that we're going to be filming specifically because of the newsletter. So if you want to subscribe, and you should, because if you subscribe now you get a 15% discount coupon to use in our shop, and you need to go to either the guild or any of the workshop diary pages. So that's crimsonguitars.com/guild or /workshop-diary, and there is a little opt-in form to the right of those pages. You might have to scroll down a bit in the workshop diary because there's so many posts in the back catalogue of that thing. Anyhow, so yeah, sign in there. This is a service that is provided by Aweber, one of the foremost newsletter companies in the world. It's all spam-free, double opt-in, and lovely. I will not spam you. There's nothing worse, is there now? Okay, what other news? What other news is we've been working on various new tools and jigs and guitars. The one thing I wanted to show you, if you follow our Facebook and Twitter or Flickr feeds, all of that stuff, which you should, you would have seen photographs of a new custom tremolo system that we're developing and working on. And I've come in on Sunday to film the podcast, and I can't find where the tremolo has been hidden. So I'm going to have to show that to you next week. But for now I'm going to come around there, try not to trip over I'm testing out a new lapel mic today, so hopefully the audio is going to be better. And if I don't trip on this and die, I'm going to take you around the workshop for a short tour and news section. I'll show you a few things that we're working on. Let's see. Okay, I'm human, I'm alive, we're done, and I can see. So, let's try not to make you ill. This is fun. This is a relatively old, let's get manual focus here, relatively old and rather lovely SG. bit of damage, and the frets need a little bit of work, of course, with the Crimson Guitars fret leveling file. But I'm sure you realised as soon as I said the word SG and the fact that it was on my bench, this beastie was ever so slightly broken-necked. And this has been something I've been playing around with for the last couple of weeks really. It takes 20 minutes of work and then you've got to leave it to cure. And as you can see, we're just about to put on some lacquer, and I've pinned it in 3 places and re-glued the crack. I went all the way there. This was snapped and repaired badly, and then came in and we had to redo the whole thing. But yeah, it's solid and coming together, and rather lovely. This instrument has been. This is one of the Robert Fripp models, and this is the beastie that we had to glue the maple veneer on to an already carved 3D top, and it was rather difficult. But yes, this one is actually going to be delivered this week, which is lovely. I've been doing a lot of refinishing. This instrument was built, in 2008. It's left-handed. Well, they used to be called the Vanquish until somebody threatened to sue me. But anyway, that's being refinished because my finishing was not very good back then. And other than that, the Clarity instrument is definitely coming together. That's what we're working on the new bridge for. And we've also been making custom control knobs, which are actually over here. Tell me what you think of these. Oh, they're so dusty. Excuse me. So, yeah, polished ebony. Oh, it's weird. That's one of my favourite there. And there's various other options. I should have dusted these off beforehand. I think that little one in the middle is what we're actually going to opt for in the end, with a little bit of brass or copper involved as well. Anyhow, so on to, here we go. This is one of a pair of twins. This has a flame sycamore top, and it's the Robert Fripp model, so it's completely hollow. It's built as if it's an acoustic, with thin sides and all of that. And we've been experimenting with a new spray gun and a partially built spray booth. And there is the sister. So these two are instruments that you're going to be seeing a lot of. She has a rosewood, actually it's not rosewood, it's an oven coal top, very similar. And they are, there's a tripod. They're beautiful. Something else that has been prototyped a lot is a new Nut Vise. And these are going to be released very soon in the Crimson Guitars Lethia Supplies shop. And there's one of the initial prototypes. And essentially, we've improved. It's all ball bearing based and lovely. And there's an adjustable widget in there that goes up and down to hold your nut or saddle in place so that it doesn't fall through the jaws like on everybody else's one. Okay, so let us walk through. Let's walk through the workshop, and I'll try not to get too out of breath. Mini workshop tour. The one place that isn't actually tidy at all, in any way, shape or form, is the timber store. And there's a very good reason for this. Crimson Guitars, the biggest news of the week actually, is look at that flamed Gonzalo Alves. This stuff is amazing. Yes, I want to lick it to show you what it's like wet. Anyway, the biggest news is that we are finally on the way to becoming a timber supplier. And we've signed the necessary deals and are properly starting to build up a supply. for you, of everything from mahogany to wenge and sliced rosewood, all the stuff. So here's the template store. You don't make guitars for 14 years without lots and lots of templates, and one of the two spindle sanders we use. I love the Triton router table. It's the only router table we actually have, and there's various other Triton tools around. Plain and thicknesser, noisy. Well, it's a thicknesser, noisy, but beautiful. Some more wood. Oh my goodness! Now that is a digression worthy of digressing. Two. Anyhow, so. This is the machine shop, and there's more wood, more open coal floating around, and it's all relatively tidy. Here's some flamed chestnut actually that's going to be processed down soon. Where can I see that flame? This is the wrong light. Never seen flamed chestnut before. And yeah, this is our jig. I'm tripping over everything here. That's where we cut our fret slots for the pre-slotted fretboards that we sell, and various other things. Anyhow, through the workshop. You don't need to see the toilets. Office is up and running. Various stockish instruments floating around that are. There's the fabulous copper top. I'm in love with this guitar. The longer we leave it, the more patina she's going to get, and we'll see what happens. The video editing software, Lightworks, fantastic stuff. Anyhow, on to something that you might rather enjoy. Up the stairs. We originally were planning on having this upstairs workshop as the main studio for creating guitars. And, well, it's much better used as our engineering department. And workshops evolve and change over the years, don't they? So, metalwork, lathe in the corner, milling machine. These two poor things died on us recently, and we've replaced motors and done various bits of repairing. I am out of breath. And this is where we make a lot of our tools, Luther's tools and the like. But something that we've been working on is this beautiful setup. And the light is terrible, isn't it? And we've got a fantastic copy router. And, oh, there we go. She's moving away, as you can see. I should put the blind down. Now, we're developing this. It is ball bearing based. And, oh, that window's terrible. And once we've finalised it and it's solid and stable and wonderful, we'll be providing the plans for people to use and maybe even supplying kits. More wood. You can never have enough wood, and storage and spray booth, etc. through there. I am going to catch my breath because walking and talking is, well, ever so slightly knackering, isn't it? Well, there we have it. A bit of a walk through the new workshops. I haven't done a tour since the day we moved in, and this is going to be not the last tour, because eventually I'll do a standalone video that shows it in its hopefully final configuration. Workshops evolve, workshops change, and this one is no different. Now, what other parts of the news? Yes, I'm changing the format of the podcast ever so slightly, trying to make it a little bit shorter, a little bit more concise, with fewer digressions. People have asked to see more of what I'm actually working on, or what we're working on in our workshops here, so hence me, just showing you a couple of guitars and bits and pieces. So expect to see these ones evolve in the new section at the top of each podcast. I am also going to be working on a better way of getting the podcast to you. We're going to try and get it in the iTunes library and places like that when I have the time. Okay, I've run out of things that I've written down to tell you about. I know there's more. Check out the website, see what's happening, and I'm building up the wood section in the shop if you're interested in tone woods. And that's something I'm particularly excited about because I'm going to get the pick of everything for my own guitars, of course. Okay, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Flickr, all of that. I'm starting to post more and more photos and of what we're working on from a day-to-day. And there's always cool links and things as well going on. All right, on to the podcast proper. Here is a query from Bobtastic in the Guild forums. He says, in the case where you're not confident in the stability of a neck blank, is it good practice to cut it into 3 sections and rotate the middle section so that the grain runs in a different direction? I understand using veneers in between when re-gluing is also recommended. And okay, Bobtastic, this was in our forums and many people have replied and we've had a little bit more clarity. Clarification. He was talking specifically about just a normal one-piece standard neck. He doesn't particularly want to make a multi-laminate neck. And in that case, that's a bit drastic. You don't have to cut it into 3 and split it and then rotate the middle section. That is a way that you can do it. Essentially, if you've got 2 bits of wood on the outside with grain, for example, going like that, and then the other one going the other way, that is ideal because the 2 outer sections are pulling against each other and counteracting the forces, and hopefully the middle one is just sitting there going, I don't know which way to go. A classic on your fence situation. Now, if I had a one-piece neck blank and I particularly wanted a one-piece neck blank, there are many other ways. There are not many other ways. There are other ways. And that would be to reinforce the neck with something else if you're worried that it's not stable enough. And the reinforcement of choice is, of course, a truss rod. And if you use the standard dual-action truss rod with the small 6mm wide by 9mm high variety that I prefer, that it's steel, it's strong, it adds weight, but it certainly adds strength and stability. You can also, and a lot of people do, use carbon fiber strips as a reinforcement on either side of the truss rod, and those are sold as strengthening rods, I suppose, or strengthening beams. And in fact, a little bit later on, we're going to talk about this exact subject. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it fast and loose and go on to the next question. So yes, Mr. Bobtastic, you can, that's a great name, you can strip it down into 3, add veneer, flip the woods around. What I would do is, if your grain is going across, so this is your wood, if the grain's going like that, you want to flip them around so the grains are going in opposite directions on either side with something relatively straight in the middle if you can. Veneer, glue, fretboard on top, lovely, lovely stable neck joint, as long as it's properly dried and stored. Now, what was going to be the last question in the show, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of fumbling around, is here. Here is a question from Yohef988 on our YouTube channel in one of the comments on, I think, the last podcast. And he says, I would love to hear your take on the subject. Video guitars do not use adjustable truss rods. Instead, they are using a carbon fiber non-adjustable rod on all of their necks. And this is what I was just talking about in answer to Bobtastic's question. They also claim that the neck never ever moves, no matter what string gauge. Is this possible? yes, it is absolutely possible. Vigier makes some phenomenal instruments, and they've done their homework. I'm absolutely certain of that. So it's possible. Is it good practice? Is it something that you would actually want? And for my money, not really. Every guitarist is different. The amount of times that I will have somebody come in and, oh, I'll do a refret or something and change the setup, and I set it up the way I expect them to want it set up, and they come and they say, oh, it's a little bit too high, or it's you know, the frets are not buzzing here, but they're buzzing a little bit down there, or it's way too low and fast and it feels like there's no strings there at all. And the way to fix that is to slightly adjust the truss rod. Give yourself a little bit more relief in the neck and change the whole feel of the instrument. It's absolutely amazing. We were at a guitar show, the Northwest Guitar Show recently, and this poor little kid who I very nearly throttled was playing a very expensive Gibson directly opposite our stand. And I had apprentice Tom. He was helping me on that day for the experience and the, you know, in talking to guitarists and guitar makers. And now Tom is our administrative assistant. He doesn't know, well, he's been here since January, so what he does know is amazing because he's learning very quickly. But he doesn't know all that much about guitars, especially from the point of view of setting them up and how they play. He's not a musician. He's just incredibly intelligent. I hope he doesn't watch this video. Now, Tom was sitting there going, Ben, that's a £2,000 or so Gibson, and even I know that Gibson have, you know, they are one of the big companies and they make amazing instruments and all of that. And he says, why does it sound so rubbish? Now, the young lad playing it, you know, early to mid-teens, he was all right, you know, he could play. He could probably play better than I can at this stage now. But the guitar sounded rubbish. It was going through an okay amp, and, you know, he was sitting there whittling, and I wanted to throttle him because the guitar itself sounded horrible. And the reason it sounded horrible, I will bring us cyclically right back to the subject. The reason it sounded horrible was the setup. The strings were rattling around. It had little piddly-ass nines on it or something to make the young lad feel like he was playing an effortless instrument. So horrible little strings that don't impart very much vibration to the instrument. The nut was, I played it afterwards, the nut was too high, the bridge was too low, and the strings were just rattling around in all of the wrong places. Now, if I had had 5 minutes, a screwdriver and an Allen wrench, you can tell I listen to the Americans a lot, I would have had that instrument sounding as good as it possibly could have, just by adjusting the truss rod and moving the bridge a little bit. And if I'd had 15 minutes, I'd adjust the nut as well, and we'd be singing. We'd be, you know, it would be a completely different instrument and much more likely to sell. If you're a guitar shop owner and you don't have somebody doing proper setups for you, then quite frankly, you're missing a trick. That instrument could have been sold at that guitar show, and they had 30 or 40 or 50 instruments sitting there, and I wouldn't be surprised if none of them were properly set up. So, is a truss rod necessary? Absolutely. For my money, yes. I can decide that I want to make my guitar necks with an ever so slight relief, and so that stays at that relief, no matter whether it's got 8s on it or somebody plays with 13s like I used to when I was beating the hell out of guitars. And I could decide to set that up like that, but my client might not like it. My client might want a completely different feel. They might want a perfectly flat neck with an incredibly low action, or the exact opposite. They might want something that they can really, really dig into. And if we've got the ability to adjust the neck relief, then we should stick with that ability, in my opinion. I've got nothing against using stiffeners to strengthen a neck and make sure that it doesn't move once you set it, but I think truss rods are essential. Now, there is one place in which this is a different story entirely, and that is in classical instruments. A classical guitar does not have a truss rod. They don't need truss rods. They don't even have a radius on the fretboard. Their fretboards are perfectly flat all the way along. And what you want with those instruments is stability and reliability, and to know that it is absolutely what it is forever. And I've got an incredibly interesting link. Again, this was going to be the last question, and which is where we generally put links to interesting things. Check out geminimusical.com and carbon fiber D-tube neck beam. So that's what you're looking for, a carbon fiber neck tube D-beam, they call it. They could have come up with a sort of more marketable name, I'm sure. Now, this is, as it says, oh, don't lose my script, a D-beam, so it goes like that, boom, in the neck, and it is very, very light. I think carbon fiber is weight for weight 3 times stronger than steel. Correct me, I'm sure I'm wrong. Carbon fiber, for its weight, is incredibly strong, and it also vibrates. It's got a grain to it, and purportedly this makes it sound a bit like wood. And, or at least that's what all the people who make carbon fiber guitars will have you believe. Now, this is a very interesting product. I love it. It looks awesome. It's lightweight. It adds strength to the neck. It also, I think, is hollow, which will add tone chambers and things, which we were talking about last week. Tone chambers in the neck. So it's an interesting product. However, even more interesting are their carbon fiber clamps. If you repair instruments or make violins and the like, check out their clamps. They are lust-inducing, beautiful things. And I want some. Anyhow, pretty tools. Basically, they're very, very nice clamps, very lightweight and very strong. And when you're putting 13 or 14 clamps on a small violin to fix it, and they're all big, heavy steel and brass things, you're likely to just collapse the whole instrument. So yeah, pretty tools and useful. Next question. This is from Cosmic Dobber. He's one of our paid guild members at crimsonguitars.com/guild. And as a guild member, he gets a discount in the shop. So go join the guild. We really appreciate your support. Now, Cosmic Dobber, he says, I've put in an order for neck and body woods 1 week early, because this week I would have sold it to him at a discount. I'm very sorry. I'm not normally this pushy, or I shouldn't be this pushy. He says, I've put in an order for neck and body woods. When storing them, should I band them together and leave them in an area out of sunlight? I'm worried that they might warp and twist. The plan is to let the wood settle in my house before starting work on them. Meanwhile, I can spend some time making and arranging a workshop. I have Bubinga, Maple and Zebrano, if this helps in any way. If you band them all together and stick them behind your couch, you will make them warp, in my opinion. And, well, that's exactly what you don't want to do. Now, I'll give you a very, very basic, quick overview of drying and seasoning wood. First of all, chances are you've probably already bought properly seasoned, rather nice wood. And chances are, it's almost certain. You're talking about Bubinga, Maple and Zebrano. All of those are bought in from abroad. They don't arrive as a tree. They arrive from, Bubinga is, I think, South America. It arrives from South America. Maple, probably America or possibly Europe, unless it's a sycamore. And the same as Zebrano, they're all exotic. They're cut up into planks, and then the planks are sent to us in the UK. It's easier to ship planks. Now, the company that sells the planks will have dried it already. It arrives in the UK pre-dried. In fact, given the current state of the world, they're not only dried beforehand, they are probably heat treated. and in order to kill any bugs and nasty creepy crawlies that might well be hiding in the wood. So because we don't want your creepy crawlies interacting with ours and creating a super beast that mutates and eats us all, or destroys our lovely wood supplies in the UK. A digression. So it's probably already dry and lovely and nice, and you don't have to worry about it. If you want, you can let it acclimate. And by the sound of things, you need to create a workshop already, so you've got the time to do that. Now, if you band them together, I'm just going to find something. Here's my leveling file. Here's something else. So let's pretend these are 2 planks of wood. If you band them together and you've got a huge big pile with no space in between each bit of wood, the moisture, what moisture there is in the wood or in the air, is going to either leave or go into the wood unevenly. So specifically with the end grain, okay, if you are, let's say you're drying them, you've got relatively wet wood, you've got moisture leaving your wood, you want it to leave evenly. And by evenly, I mean all over, all the way around. Now, the first thing to think about is the end grain is essentially lots of tiny little tubes going all the way along the instrument, all along the bit of timber. And if you don't do something, you will lose much more moisture from the end of your board, and as a result of that, it will warp. It will lose more moisture than the other sides, become lighter and cause cupping and issues. Now, what I tend to do is I will, with a fretboard for example, I'll dip it in wax, just the ends, to stop the moisture from the ends going out and allow it to go evenly. I also use house paint, or even I've also used a water and white glue mix, 50-50, paint that on, and it sort of seals up the end grain mostly, and evens out it evens out where the water leaves the neck. Now, you do say band them together. You need something called stickers. Now, this is guitar wood. It's not going to be more than 1 meter long. So all you will need is 2 stickers, and they need to be 1 inch or smaller in height. Well, let's say 1 inch by 1 inch. You need about 1 inch gap in between each piece of wood, because what we want is even airflow throughout the whole stack of timber, so that it will dry, and it will dry evenly. Now, cut inch by inch long strips of wood and put them at either end, and put them 60 centimeters apart or thereabouts. And as I say, this is only 1 meter long, and that will do. Now, if you've got that done, then the airflow will go through and the moisture will evaporate off, and all will be hunky-dory. I can't believe I'm saying that. The other problem that I have with what you're saying is you're going to put them behind your couch, Mr. Dobber, and there's no airflow behind your couch, I would hazard to guess. And this is summer in the UK, but there might be a heater back there in the winter, so just watch out for that. What would be better is to store it even outside, somewhere dry, under a lean-to or something like that, with lots of airflow going through. This is if it's particularly wet. Excuse me. It's hay fever season. I'm not doing too well. So if you're drying large, long, big planks, put them outside under a lean-to or in a barn or something. Make sure that it's open at both ends and you've got lots of air going through. Some people even use fans to pull the air through and dry the wood. Okay, you're talking about something that's probably dry in the first place already and just needs to be stored and kept dry, or at the very least, acclimated to the UK climate. And you mentioned banding them together. The top the top board, or the top 2 or 3 boards, are quite likely to actually cup because there's no weight holding them down anyway. So you can band things together just using those ratchet straps that you get on cars. You get for roof racks and the like. And ratchet strap, if you want, over the area where the stickers are. And I would even put a little stick underneath it so the strap itself isn't touching the wood. And then strap the whole thing together, but still making sure that you've got even airflow. And that will save your top board from cupping, potentially. Now, again, this is done a lot in timber yards where they will either expect to just lose the top 2 or 3 boards or sell them at a discount because they are slightly cupped, or chop them up into smaller bits. But a lot of timber yards will also use a big chunky steel banding, and they'll sticker the whole pile up together and then put steel bands around it and leave it to dry. And for freshly cut wood, you're talking about an inch, about a year per inch of thickness, apparently. Now, that is a fact that I'm pulling out of reading a book, and I'm not sure if I'm quoting the fact right, so do some research before you believe me on that one. Anyhow, so what would I recommend for you, Mr. Dobber? I would say, yes, inch stickers 60 centimeters apart, or as close to that as you can get, given that your wood is probably only 40 or 50 centimeters long. So put the stickers on, and then either put something heavy on the top using more stickers to stop the heavy thing from, you know what I mean. Or you can band it up and use that to keep it all nice and stable and sturdy. And airflow is the key, so maybe behind your couch is the wrong place. Maybe, well, I don't know your house. So yeah, just keep it a nice even airflow and you will be all right. A question now from Dream Lane in our forums. He says, I'm trying to design a body and I'm wondering if I book match resource some 4/4 quilted maple. Conservatively, I reckon I'd end up with about a 3/8 inch thick top. It would be enough thickness on the top for some nice PRS-esque contours. I suppose it would be plenty at least. I'm staring at my PRS SE and it looks to be carved down no more than 1/4 inch, but I figured I'd ask here to see what kind of knowledge I could obtain. Now, yes, 3/8 inch, I have a ruler, I only speak metric, that is roughly 9 millimeters. You can do a bit of carving with that, yes, that's not a problem, especially if you don't mind it being particularly thin at the edges, so 2 or 3 millimeters. However, for most carving, I'm going to pull up the nearest guitar. Something like this, which is similar, the carve is similar at least to a PRS. I will, well, that looks shiny on that camera. My top is resawed to about 13 millimeters. So, looking at my ruler again, well, it's over 1/2 inch, and it's closer to, yeah, it's just over 1/2 inch. I can't think in 30 seconds of an inch or anything like that. Now, 13 millimeters will give you, I think that's what Gibson use. That's around about the measurement that they use, and it's probably what PRS uses as well. I would have a look at their factory tour videos and things like that to find out. There's nothing to stop you using a 9mm, 10mm top and doing some carving, because you certainly can, especially if it dips in underneath the edge, like PRSs do. However, for my money, for a standard PRS carve and a Les Paul type carve, 13 millimeters or thereabouts is, in order to get some nice deep carves and pretty curves, that's what I would use. However, if you've got some lovely quilted maple, use it, or send it my way, because you know, I've got a bit of a thing for wood, as they say. Okay, here we have another query. This is from our guild apprentice, Krolty. He says, would it be possible to build interchangeable tonewood parts for testing wood components on the fly? What I mean is having the three main tonewood sections of the guitar, i.e. the body, neck and fingerboard, then constructing them in such a way that they can be swapped out to test the sound of various combinations. Say you take the most common wood combo that is considered a pro guitar, mahogany body, maple neck and a rosewood fingerboard, as a starting point. Well, now you want to try and set the same thing up with a kingwood fingerboard or fretboard. Remove the strings, unclamp the fingerboard, pop in the kingwood fingerboard module and away you go. Now you want to try a chestnut body, same thing, unclamp the neck and pop it onto the chestnut body module. I see exactly where you're coming from. To start off with, I'm going to say again, I believe the tonewood does have an effect on the tone of an instrument. I'm going to do some experiments and I'll tell you, I'm going to do some empirical, properly scientifically, tested experiments. However, I think that tonewood is only at best 1/3 of what makes a guitar tone. A guitar's tone, yeah. So you've got the tonewood that you use, that's fine. You've got the construction methods that you use, that's a full third. And you've got the electronics, and that is the other third. And it's not only just the tonewood that makes up the first third we're talking about. It's the nut and the frets and the bridge material and that sort of thing. Now, you've got a brass bridge, it sounds different from a stainless steel bridge. If you've got we've just been asked to make a stainless steel nut for somebody actually. If you've got a stainless steel nut, it will sound different to a bone nut or to an ebony nut like you have on violins or some classical instruments. Now, the electronics have a huge effect on the tone. Change the capacitor out on your instrument from a 0.047 microfarad to anything, and it will make a huge difference to the tone. More so, I think and suspect, than changing a rosewood fretboard for a kingwood fretboard. There's not that much bulk in there really in the fretboard, and it's going to be a subtle difference. So, what am I saying? I'm saying that you could spend the next 3 years building your jig. You could spend thousands of pounds buying wood, which I'll happily sell you, to make these jigs. And in the end, you'll find that to empirically measure the differences in tone, it's only going to be slight. Kingwood is a fairly dense wood. So is rosewood. So is maple. Etc. So those 3 or 4, there's a lot of woods that are going to sound very, very similar. And the same thing goes with a body. If you're trying to hear the difference between a chestnut body and a swamp ash body, they are so similar, in fact, that I have got chestnut that I thought was swamp ash. And I had to go do some research and find out the person that had cut the tree down and make absolutely certain that it was what they said it was. So those two woods, they weigh the same, they look the same, and to all intents and purposes, they're going to sound the same, or at least incredibly similar. There are differences in between the wood that you will harvest from the top of the tree and the bottom of the tree. At the bottom of the tree, it's more dense because there's more weight bearing down on it. At the top of the tree, it's less compressed and will sound warmer and lighter and more airy. Let alone the differences between trees of the same species but grown in differing geographic locations. I've got upstairs some beautiful spruce. Now, this was a windfall in some recent storms in the UK. At a local Earl's estate or something. The name has completely escaped me. Anyway, it's spruce, and I've got these beautiful 2-inch thick planks that I'm going to turn into bodies at some point. But it's not the spruce that you would expect on an acoustic top, because that spruce is the same tree but grown at a high altitude in Switzerland or wherever, and in Europe. And because it's grown at a high altitude, it grows much slower, and the rings are much closer together, and it's denser. The English variation of that same species of tree, the grain is much further apart, and it's going to make an amazing body for a solid body, and it's got a story behind it, but it ain't going to make a good guitar top, not for an acoustic instrument, not by a long shot. So, I'm going to go back to answering your question. Yes, it is possible. You could sink a lot of money into it, and you would end up with something that could quite possibly give you some results. Is it advisable? Absolutely not. The other reason it's not advisable is that you are taking the glue entirely out of the equation. And I've edited his question down a little bit. He did mention using threaded inserts to hold the parts together. A threaded insert, for one, adds mass that isn't there in the wood, so that's going to affect the tone. But it's also not solidly welding the two pieces of wood together as you would on an instrument. And you will not get the same result. A piece of wood glued to another piece of wood will not sound the same as a piece of wood screwed or bolted to another piece of wood. So whatever you have, it will not be empirical. It will not be accurate. And I suspect would be a waste of your time. If you are interested in tone, the experiment that I have in mind is to make various blocks of wood that are exactly the same size, 2 inches by 4 inches by 10 inches or whatever. See, I talk about imperial and metric, and when I'm talking about big measurements, I think in inches. It's absolutely crazy. And I will make a bunch of tone wood blocks that are all exactly the same size, put a pickup on them in the same place, or a piezo disc or something like that, and use that to measure what they roughly sound like. You know, this is bright and hard and resonant, this is dull and warm and thuddy. And I'll categorize various different woods within that method. And then you can say, put this wood and that wood together, and you'll get something, hopefully, that is a mix between the two. And that's what guitar making is about. It's about throwing in the different mixes into the recipe, and with experience, you'll know roughly what it's going to sound like. Once you've built the instrument, once you've used the construction, set neck will sound so, bolt-on neck will sound so, having a tremolo with springs will add natural reverb, having a through body stringing with a tunematic will sound like this. Put all of those together. If you don't quite like the tone, then you change the pickups out, or you change the capacitor, or you put better control knobs. The knobs make no difference. Better potentiometers in there, or even change the value of the potentiometers. And then you've got your amp. If you don't like the sound, go and buy a better amp, or There are hundreds of different. I nearly went on a Jack White analogy talking about crap guitars and crap amps, and it's analog, therefore it sounds better. But there are an infinite number of things in the chain that you can adjust much more easily than what would probably be a 2 or 3 year experiment with a lot of different woods. So, an interesting idea, and I see where you're coming from, but for the love of God, don't waste your time and money doing it. Please. We're at the end of the show. We're done. I shared a link with you earlier, so go and check out Gemini Musical. That link will be geminimusical.com. It will be in the show notes, which I'm going to be updating very soon. And it's also in the description of this video on YouTube. There's also another awesome video that I've watched. It's about, well, it's a guy who very cleverly defaces his national currency and then re-engraves an awesome picture on it. And engraving is something that interests me a heck of a lot. And every time I've tried it, I've failed utterly. And watching this video, I've realized that I've gone and bought a set of engraver's tools, sold to me as a set of engraver's tools, and they're not right. They're not the same tools that this chap's using. So I'm going to revisit that and start trying my hand at engraving again. It's very useful for when you're doing inlay work in particular. And check this video out, links in there. It's worth doing. It's amazing what you can do if you have the right tools, and how bad you can be at something that you could do if you have the wrong tools. With that in mind, I'm going to very cleverly say go to crimsonguitars.com/shop and check out the tools and jigs and various luthier supplies that we have on offer. We're building up this part of our business massively because, quite frankly, the current offering of tools for luthiers out there has consistently disappointed me, or has been too expensive for what it actually is. So we're making a bunch of really good tools and jigs and templates and plans and the like. And also, as I mentioned earlier, we're starting to supply tone woods for a similar reason. I want to be able to supply the best possible to all of you. Do not forget that we're on Facebook. I'm very tempted to delete my Facebook, but for now we're on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Flickr and all of that on a daily basis. And wish me luck. This week we've got a new intern starting, so life is going to be interesting. Please sign up to the newsletter, check out the workshop blog, which goes out every Wednesday now, and all in all, have an awesome week. I will see you next week. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. Have a great week. Cheers.